the right and the reality.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Kusholi Mubarak to each and every one, the whole ummah, on this blessed day of the birth anniversary of Imam Hassan Askari alayhi salam. Welcome to Ahlulbayt Live, a weekly show where we have lively discussions on religious and social affairs. I am your host, and it's an honor to be here, Neil Nasser. Honor to have our respected Sayyid Jafar Milani with us. Honestly, a steadfast supporter of the community. Somebody inspires us and lifts our spirits whenever we see him. Assalamu alaikum, Sayyidina.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As always, it's amazing to be here, to see you. Amazing, wonderful son, brother, loved. And the same with the team, the same for Ahlulbayt, and the name Ahlulbayt itself always shining in our hearts, inshallah, and in your hearts. And salaam alaikum to the viewers. Inshallah, you have an amazing and wonderful, wonderful time and celebrate these events in the most beautiful ways, inshallah.
Jazakallah khair. And what a way to celebrate than having you in our presence, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Today's topic, of course, is celebrating the life of Imam Hassan Askari alayhi salam. We've called it the guiding star, which is fitting, I think, a profound exploration of his life and the impact of the 11th Imam alayhi salam as we delve into that remarkable life, his teachings and his enduring legacy, inshallah, which goes on today. It's a true message of compassion and tolerance, inshallah. Sayyidina, you ready?
Yes, definitely, brilliant. Definitely. This is the name of the Imam, sallallahu wa sallam alayhi, and that beautiful shine that would come from that star.
Inshallah, definitely. It twinkles far and wide. So I think, first and foremost, why is it you know, when we look at his life and we look at his conception and his birth, can we start at those early years and talk about that and then lead through his life, inshallah?
Definitely, definitely. Well, the Imam, sallallahu wa sallam alayhi, alongside his father, sallallahu alayhi ajma'een, they had a very different lifestyle than the previous Imams. In that sense that they were both spending most of their time, obviously during the time of his father, the 10th Imam, and then when he was born, the 10th Imam had spent at various prisons. His time was at various prisons. The leaders of the time, the so-called Ummah leaders or the Khulafa at the time, one after the other, they were very, very unfair to both Imams. So the Imam was brought up in very special circumstances, having his father on and off at various prisons and moved from one corner to another. It's not easy. Knowing what knowledge, see, it's very different when you look at somebody who's just looking at his father as a father. That is emotions. Those are, as you know, and you already teach better than I do this stuff and talk to people about these issues. There are emotions involved, knowing that the father is in prison or your father is under house arrest or being basically restricted in movement as a father. But knowing that he's your Imam is a different scenario. And we believe that every single one of the children of the Imams, the Ahlulbayt of the Imams, they obviously knew who their Imam was. So they were following him wholeheartedly, supporting him wholeheartedly. And that would mean carrying even a bigger burden. Because you see your Imam, not only your father, your guardian, but he's your Imam as well, being tortured, being moved from one prison to another. That on its own is, for a child, it would be such a devastating feeling. So for Ahlulbayt alayhim salam to say that they started their lifetime, they started their basically early years, or from the time they were born, they started with that heavy responsibility,
such a burden, right?
to know that your Imam, who you love as a father, as an Imam, as a leader, as a guide, as a person who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has manifested for them to be there and for us to follow them, he's been sectioned, he's been put in various prisons. So it's a very, very difficult, and not many people think about it that way. Because you look at, okay, well, fine, the Imam was moved from one place to another. How about his family?
Yeah.
How about his children?
Yeah. It's the impact, isn't it?
All of that. And yes, the whole ummah, the rest of the people as well, everybody else was there, but we're talking specifically about his, right now, about the 11th Imam, Imam Hassan Askari, and the effect that he was going through. So there was quite a lot.
Yeah.
And that puts a lot of pressure on Imam Hassan Askari himself from childhood. But as we know, as we have always seen, Imams stay Imams from day one.
That's it.
The way they carry themselves, the way they show that solidarity, the way they stand high and mighty, and not letting fear, not letting anything but the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to not letting anything else worldly that might affect them in such a manner that might say, as we do ourselves, we say, like, have a heart attack, or something worse than that. That would happen to normal people. Imams would not have that. They wanted, obviously, to show people how things are supposed to be done. So these early days were very, very different, very difficult. And the amount of stories and the amount of history that we have, obviously, unfortunately, very little is mentioned, very little is read about and researched, but there is plenty. There is plenty there. The stories of how things were happening at his time, at the time of the Imam Hassan Askari, there is a very well-known, just this is for the viewers that might interest them, there's a well-known figure by the name Bahlul.
Okay.
He was a person who decided to kind of turn himself into, or pretend that he's a little bit out of his mind.
Okay.
Just to get away with murder to do when it came to the people in charge.
Sure.
So he was just doing that to get away with, okay, well, he's just crazy, let's just leave him alone.
Yeah.
But he would convey the message of Ahlulbayt, the message of truth, the message of haqq, all the time, from his wording and from the things he used to do and that he used to say. So it was, and we have one occasion that we'll come to, inshallah, now, because I don't want to keep dragging it, but there's Imam Hassan Askari, at his early days, he had, there was a time that a few things happened and Bahlul was there. So we have sayings that have been relayed to us by Bahlul himself, and they're amazing. They're life lessons to us. Definitely.
Amazing. I'd love to get into more of that as we go through the show. Just going back to that birth, conception, into that environment that was very suppressed, not having access to his father, the Imam of his time, but also you look to your father as a role model. You look to your father to get your moral compass. Who around the Imam alayhi salam was close to the family where he could maybe get information from his father, or he could utilize as a role model how to become the Imam that he was?
Of course, there were companions, very close companions, who had lived with the 10th Imam from early days, and some even lived, I think we can say they can go back as far as the 8th Imam, Imam Ali ibn Musa Rida. Because unfortunately, well, fortunately for them, they had a longer lives, but at the same time, they were blessed to meet all those imams. But so Imam Ali ibn Musa Rida, the 8th Imam, and then the 9th Imam, and the 10th Imam, and lived through partially through the life of the 11th Imam, Imam Hassan Askari as well. So they were carrying that message, and they're very, very humble. They're very genuine.
Yes.
Companions of the Imams alayhi salam, and there were not that many. I think I have I did my quick research quite a few
God bless you, sir.
years ago, but I think we have altogether we have 93 people.
Wow, that's quite a high number.
That is, yeah, that is quite a high number in comparison to the previous Imams. That were most of them were carrying the message across all the way from the time of Imam Ali ibn Musa Rida, the 8th Imam.
MashaAllah.
So they were very close companions, and the interesting part is that because of this huge number, that we say huge, it's not that big, obviously, but in comparison to the students, for example, of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam, which at times there were up to 5,000 or more students, but to actually have very close, sincere companions and that level in this number is pretty unique,
yes,
to be honest.
In comparison to the time that they were living in and the oppression and the, you know, the solitude that they had to face, it's a high number of followers.
It is definitely. And just like you mentioned, those times, and the Imams were they had very short lives as well in that period, because of the amount of oppression and because of the amount of pressure that they used to face. But these companions were carrying that message. It seemed that when you look at the way, if we want to categorize the way that Ahlulbayt alayhi salam, he moved from the time of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam to Imam Ali alayhi salam, to Imam Hassan alayhi salam, to Imam Hussein Sayyid al-Shuhada salawatullah wa salamu, and then carrying on. It moved each of them played their part in their own era, in their own timing, but moving it towards a specific aim.
Yes.
And when we see it coming from the Imam Ali ibn Musa Rida alayhi salam, the 8th Imam, onwards, things move into preparation for the 12th Imam, Ajjallah Ta'ala Farajah Sharif, and him not being around for various times or various purposes. But basically, obviously, then later on we found out that there is they didn't know at the time, the companions, but they only knew who the 12th Imam is, but they didn't know about the Ghaiba itself. So that movement towards how it will show up, how it will happen later on, was taking its perfect shape throughout the lives of the 8th, the 9th, 10th, and the 11th Imam. So even making use of that, of the periods where they were oppressed, imprisoned, kept away from the general public, how they managed to relay the messages, contact their families and the public, this all falls into falls into place, and you know, becomes that puzzle basically becomes one picture as we go accordingly. So there were, yes, to answer that question, there were close companions, there were people who would relay the messages at the time that the Imam was, the 10th Imam was in prison or put in restricted areas, various restricted areas. And it's very interesting how these messages were relayed to, and how the Imam would show his love towards his son and his family. And so the messages for the public were totally different from his messages for his family. And it's very, very interesting how these teachings would arrive to a point where we will talk soon about this, affects the Imams from their childhood. Even the Imam Hassan Askari from his childhood, how much he'd received is amazing.
Phenomenal, phenomenal. So obviously knowledge is passed down through the generations, through, you know, the DNA,
Yeah, of course.
obviously that lineage, and chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be the holy Imam, but then having that lack of presence of guidance as well, there has to be a way of feeding that towards him. So the Imam alayhi salam is then growing through his life from birth, conception, his very early years, and then going into his youth, teenagehood, etc. You know, what does that look like? How is his surroundings at that point?
Ahsant. This is the part that I wanted to mention and come to, but I didn't want to rush into it. We have a picture of young boys playing around in that neighborhood where the Imam lives, the Imam Hassan Askari alayhi salam. And the Imam is there. Ahlul comes, obviously not knowing who the Imam, not knowing this young boy.
Yes.
And he notices that he's sitting there looking in various directions, but at the same time he's got tears in his eyes. So he comes close to this child, a young boy, and thinking that maybe because the other ones don't want to play with him, they don't want to share anything with him, or there's an issue. So he's trying to come and comfort him. And he says, "My son, what's the matter? What's bothering you?" And the answer he gets is shocking.
Really?
And it just shows how much knowledge has moved already to this young boy.
SubhanAllah.
He say,
Roughly how age, what kind of age would you roughly
we're talking about 6 or 7.
MashaAllah. Wow.
And he's looking at this man, and he tells him, "There's nothing wrong with me. I'm just worried. I talk to these boys, and they don't seem to be understanding this issue that we were not born, we were not brought to this life so that we can just play and waste our time." And the man looks and he says, "What do you mean?" And the Imam, obviously at his childhood, in that early age, early years, he starts reciting parts of the Quran. And he says, "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim," the part that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala specifically talks about creating us, and then not mentioning, "Do not forget that I created you for a purpose. Do not waste your time."
Wow.
So he's talking about, "Innama khalaqnakum abatha." Do you think we created you for nothing? And he says, this is what nothing is. They're playing. They're wasting their time.
Yeah.
They should be studying. They should be making use of their time. They should be connecting themselves to Allah.
Yeah.
So to him as a child is already in that style of, okay, the first maybe 2 or 3 years, 4 years have passed. That's a baby coming to a toddler.
Yeah.
Now already you should be able to understand the world around you. You should be able to read Quran, understand, memorize, help, figure out why you're here for. And to him, it's very interesting. Not many times that we have seen this, that the Imams count our lives backwards. So from the day you're born, you're not, when you become day 1 or year 1,
Yeah.
it's your first date of birth or your first birthday.
Yes.
It's actually you have lost 1 year.
Oh. Look at it.
They
like that.
started,
What a conception.
it's like 2 years passed, 2 years of your life passed.
Yes.
You have lost 2 years.
Yes.
What have you done in these 2 years? 10 years have passed. Wow. So it's not like your 10th birthday. It's sorry, you've lost 10 years
Yeah.
of your life.
Yeah. What have you done?
It's the way, you look at it.
Yeah.
Whatever your life's supposed to be, 80 years or 90 or 100. And by the way, congratulations to your respected mother. I just
God
heard
bless
that you will be fantastically celebrating her 70th birthday. So
Inshallah. Yeah,
congratulations to
definitely.
her.
Thank you so
my
much.
respect. So, yes, what have you done? 10 years have passed, 20 years have passed. it's gone from your life.
That's it.
From that 80 or 90, 100 years, you've already lost this much of it. So this, it's a totally different.
Yeah, conceptually, it's a different way of looking at it. You can almost put it in a way, you go to sleep at night and you've just lost a day. And it's that reflection about what you did during that day. Did I do something good? Did I do something for my akhirah? Did I help anybody? Did I grow, develop? Or did I just waste the day? Sit there and watch Netflix or whatever it is.
Exactly.
What did I gain from that? And that's a very interesting concept that the Imams take, that I've lost a year.
Yes.
At 6, 7 years old, to be able to think like that, the parents or whoever, maybe the youth that are watching this show right now, what a way to, you look at our youth today and compare it, subhanAllah.
And similarly, when you talk about, the life of Ahlulbayt alayhi salam is our lessons for life, basically.
Yes.
And I'm glad you mentioned this about the youth, which is very important. Looking forward, and we really need to work on ourselves to change this concept. Because when you talk to them, soon I will be 18. Next year I'll be 17, 16, 20. I'll be celebrating my 20th, doing this and doing that on that day. It's never a talk about what am I doing from here until
that time.
That time.
Yeah.
What my plans are.
There you go.
And what have I done so far? And what I can be in the future for me to be who I am.
Yeah.
With that name, with this body, with this health, with this mind, how Allah has created me to make full use of it. And the blessings that we have received from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the only way to say thank you to Him is making good use of it.
Yeah.
Because on the Day of Judgment, we will be quiet and our organs will be talking.
There we go.
So, what have you done?
What have
I done?
The mouth is quiet,
that every limb will be speaking to themselves on their own and talking about the time that they spent on this earth and what they have done, because the future life, the next life, is the indefinite.
There you go.
And limitless.
Subhanallah.
Life.
I love the concept of all of this. It's kind of my kind of talk, We've got to look at setting goals within our lives, and just because I can't wait till I'm 21 or 18 or whatever, it's about that transformation. What do I want to be? What do I want to be when I get to that age? How can I achieve it? And how can I grow in a very sustainable way? Maybe it's the small steps that lead you to that particular destination, but alhamdulillah, that's incredible. What an amazing concept to look at that. So we've got the Imam and a great picture and an incredible story, Sayyid. Thank you so much for blessing us on this beautiful day. The story of the young 6, 7-year-old Imam alayhi salam. So we then go into more elder part of his life, maybe his teenagers. He's then, spreading his knowledge. He's then going to a different realm of his life. What did that look like in terms of picture?
When the Imam, obviously, he became an Imam at the age of 22. And that's when his father, the 10th Imam, passed away. So there were plenty of challenges again, carrying on from his father. But mostly we see how his abilities and his knowledge was to show people the true picture of Islam, the right from wrong, and to prepare them for obviously the one and only son that he had to have in the future, and that's the 12th Imam. This took various styles. Again, obviously, even in a more difficult situation than his father, and that's why he was named Al-Askari, the person who was carrying. An Askari is the person who was always part of the where the the soldiers will sleep, and that's similar to a kind of prison style.
cell, yeah.
Yeah, style. Protected style. That's why it was called Askari. There are obviously periods during different caliphs at the time where the Imam was allowed to be out and free and talk to people. And we have many occasions. For example, there was a time where it had not rained for a year or more than that. So the place was very dry.
Yeah.
And people were going through a very difficult time. And suddenly the Imam hears that people had gone out for istisqa, to ask Allah for doing the special prayer for rain.
Yes.
And obviously there are very specific settings and rulings that men have to be separated from women, women have to be separated from their children, to bring that feeling of sorrow, asking Allah for purely, wholeheartedly for that mercy.
Yes.
Because once you separate people from one another, you break their heart, and
That's
naturally you run their emotions to its maximum. And subhanAllah, it's that moment that Allah loves.
Yeah.
It's the moment where you're inside,
the heart is soft.
oh, please.
Yeah.
You're going through that moment
You're
of
on your knees,
extreme, on your knees, extreme weakness, extreme need for that power, and that's when He responds. So it's just purely the way Allah deals with issues. It's just amazing, subhanAllah. And anyway, so this situation happens. They go out, nothing happens. And the Imam hears about this. And then he hears that a group of Christians showed up and they went out. And the moment they raised their hands to the sky, rain started showing. So that started obviously causing doubt between the Muslims and what's going on.
Yes.
Every Muslim had gone out and the Khalifa was with them.
Yeah.
So the Imam asks himself, he says, I want to go out and see this happening again, and I want to resolve the issue. Obviously, he doesn't say, I want to resolve the issue. He says, I want to see this happening.
What's the witness? What's happening?
Yes. So the Khalifa says, well, now we already have rain. There is no need for it to happen.
Yeah.
He says, no, let's just do this again. And we want to show the people, prove to them whether this is right or wrong.
Yes.
Are these people doing a miracle? They're playing with our minds? Or is it actually something holy that they're doing?
Of course.
So they do, and obviously Imam has got his knowledge. They arrange and they go out. So they go out, and again, all the people are out in the kind of open, and the Muslims are praying. Obviously, there is no need for rain. They just want to test and see what's happening. The Christians, there is one of the monks that he goes and he raises his hands, and all his friends, colleagues raise their hands together as well. And the moment he raises his hands, the clouds start coming in. In that exact moment, the Imam jumps and he takes something from the fist or the hand of the monk that had risen in hand, and he wraps it straight away he wraps it in a cloth and he hides it. And he tells him, now raise your hands and see what happens. So obviously he does, and nothing happens. So the Khalifa comes, the people come, what happened, what it is. He says, this man had managed to find a bone from the skeleton from one of the prophets, the old prophets. And the ruling of Allah is that a bone or any part of the previous prophets that was buried, if it shows up in front of the sky, the ruling is the sky is to respond immediately, a cloud come and rain should come down.
Wow.
That's a natural reaction to any part of the old prophets or the dead ones showing up on the surface.
Wow.
And this man knew this will happen.
Yes.
So it's not because he's holy and he knows a way for Allah.
No.
He's actually using a trick that
Yes.
Allah himself had formulated to happen. So he's just using that.
Wow.
Told him, now pray and let's see if that's going to work.
And there was
It
absolutely
didn't.
nothing.
And that shows the people, the Muslims, what reality is and how to not to be deceived.
Yes.
And it's a life lesson for us as well.
Totally.
Especially now, with
Oh,
what
no.
you get,
Yes.
with this propaganda,
Yes.
social media, left, right, and center,
That's
being
right.
bombarded, all sorts of issues. You need to think hard. You
Yes.
should not get carried away, should not be deceived by anybody who says, I am who I am,
Yes.
and I can do this, and I can do that, and look, this is how I can do that, how I can kind of achieve what you were trying to achieve in 40 years, or your ulamas, where scholars have
Yeah.
not managed to achieve it, and we have
Yeah.
managed to achieve it. No, you have to be very, very kind of wise and vigilant about how things are done. So this is one of the many stories that the Imam had arranged for to clarify the situation of Islam and the situation of being in the right
Beautiful.
at his time.
What an amazing story. And there's so much deeper meanings when you know, really think about that story from different angles. Obviously, there's the truth, the haqq of Islam versus obviously other religions, but there's also the falsehood that's being shown by the monk when he raises his hands and goes to the sky. You know, interestingly, as you say, it's very relatable to nowadays, you know, like social media, but also what's happening as well in the world. We see the oppression that's happening on a daily basis. But what we're fed on some platforms is not the truth. It's not haqq, it's falsehood. And it's what we have to do as individuals, as Shia of Ali, to understand that oppression and then use our voices in the right way and be able to look at this as a total lesson of falsehood and propaganda that's in front of the Imam's eyes, but we should be the ones to take that bone away from the hand of the people that are spreading that falsehood and then really leave it into the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
So definitely,
Subhanallah.
definitely. And the way you explained it wonderfully, as always you do, mashallah, fantastically.
God bless you. Thank you.
And you make me shine from inside by just hearing that and seeing you explaining it. Knowing that there is always a possibility, there is always that opportunity of us being deceived by somebody
Yes,
or something.
yes, definitely.
And having that fact in our day-to-day, being realistically kind of there all the time, should deter us from many things.
Yes, definitely.
Because once you're so sitting confidently and say, I'm safe, I know it all, that's where things will definitely fall apart and
That's
things will go downhill.
Yeah.
Because there's no safety net there unless you are fully covered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and
That's
Ahlulbayt alayhi salam.
And shaitan is always whispering,
Yes,
right?
that's-
Shaitan
that's-
is always present.
His job.
To kind of quote a movie, it's quite a good movie. I won't say it out on air, but there's a line in there that says the greatest trick the devil ever played is showing the world that he doesn't exist. So that's propaganda within itself, right? It's what's being displayed on our live visions, which is telling lies through us through our vision, sometimes is not what is the truth. So yeah, we need to look deeper into that. Alhamdulillah. This story as well shows a real story of unity, though, amongst the ummah.
Yes.
And that's what Imam Hassan Askari, alayhi salam, his life showed that unity. His the way that he was able to bring people together, the ummah together, and also set the groundwork for the Imam, alayhi salam, our 12th Imam, to be able to set that groundwork within that unity in preparation was phenomenal.
Yes.
Can we talk a little bit about that? He became an Imam at 22, I believe?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, it's making use of every opportunity, like I mentioned, because of his lifestyle being most of it in prison and kept separated from the ummah. But bringing that unity, bringing the people together by his messages of having the Friday prayers, sticking to one another, supporting one another, and knowing, constantly reminding them of knowing who their Lord, who their Allah subhanahu Azza wa Jal was and is. And that point, sometimes we take for granted ourselves that just this gathering, this understanding that we all get together because Allah has given us this blessing. Whatever I do with my family, with my friends, with my loved ones, it's because Allah has given me that opportunity.
Yes.
So appreciating this blessing,
Yes.
and accepting this ni'mah, and this is where we stand in between when we talk about people who talk about kufr.
Yes.
It says kufr starts with kufran and ni'mah. Kufr is not somebody who will just throw their words and their messages at you, you're kafir.
Yes.
It's not that.
No,
It's
no.
not that. Nobody is kafir as long as you believe in Allah subhanahu Azza wa Jal.
Oneness,
the
right?
oneness of Allah subhanahu Azza wa Jal, whatever name,
Yes.
no matter.
Yes.
Arabic, Farsi, Khuda, you can Allah, God, Lord, Master,
Yes.
you name
Yeah.
him, title him, whatever you want to title
SubhanAllah,
him.
it's 100 names,
Yes.
attributes.
Yes, definitely
Alhamdulillah.
the attributes are there as well, those beautiful, most beautiful names and attributes there. But also in various languages. And talking about languages, by the way, Imam Hassan Askari was well known for his diversity in languages. He knew how to speak to people in their own languages. He knew
Subhanallah.
many
Subhanallah.
languages
Wow.
fluently, and he was talking, there's Turkish, there is Greek, there is kind of other languages that he would have talking to people, which again shows how, again, this is part of it, which again shows how he wanted to bring people together, talking even in their own mother tongue to
Beautiful.
bring them together.
There we go.
And so explaining that kufran ni'mah, that if you do not appreciate the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this setting that we have right now, you and I, we are sitting here, it's a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Definitely.
If we do not appreciate it, if we do not love one another more, if we do not make use of every second that we are here together, it's kufran ni'mah.
There we go.
It's not appreciating Allah, it's a type of kufr. And it's totally different from shirk.
Yes.
Shirk is when you believe that there is more than one
Yes.
goddess,
Yes.
gods. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's shirk. That's bringing others into it.
Yes.
But it's not kufr. It's
No.
a different story altogether. And we have to differentiate between these. But unfortunately, you do get, especially in the at the time of the ISIS and the rest of them, Daesh, and so many more, you know, anybody they don't like, it's always you kafir, you
Yes,
kafir.
yes.
That's total nonsense. There's no way you can use that word for anybody at all, whatsoever. So the Imam sends his messages. The Imam gets people together for various occasions, and he makes sure that they sit together, they hear his messages, they learn from one another. And now that you mentioned, I personally think maybe there is a good reason for the Imam and his father having this number of companions.
Yeah.
Because obviously the bigger number of the companions, pure companions that you have, sincere ones, the more you can reach people
Hassan.
in different parts
Hassan.
of the community,
Yeah.
of the ummah itself.
Yeah.
So having this number, I think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, again, is everything does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is
course.
beautiful signs, so he does it in his own way. But sometimes we look and we try to understand and say, like, maybe it looked like this, maybe that's why. Maybe the previous Imams didn't have that many companions because there was no need for that. But as we go along, nearing the 12th Imam, Allah Ta'ala Faraj Sharif, bringing people together, was one of the main issues, and getting people to think about what they want in the future, to do things as part of one team, one ummah,
Yes.
and understanding the need for the Imam to be the one leader,
Yes.
always there. Maybe that was the plan.
Yeah.
And that's how it worked. So those messages getting across, even in a most amazing way, by wood for fire that was transported to the prisons, and the Imam would carve into one of those logs and put the message inside, and then pass it back to the person who would come next time to bring more wood. That was one of the ways to actually secretly get the messages out to the public and get people to see and hear what the Imam wanted and how he wanted them to act. So there's plenty there, but it all pours into that one kind of let's call it one sea, one flow.
Yes,
that
definitely.
he wanted people to be in that direction.
To feed that unity, because as we know, the long occultation of his son, the 12th Imam, may Allah hasten his reappearance, inshallah, that there needs to be that unity within the ummah. There needs to be that total sincerity, that overall belief in the Imam alayhi salam for him to reappear.
Definitely.
And the length of obviously the occultation. So that preparation, as we're saying, and you're saying that high number, 93, well, alhamdulillah, they were able to spread the message far and wide. There's no coincidences. Obviously, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best of planners, and He knows what the preparation, what the next steps will be. He spent, obviously, a lot of his life incarcerated, in prison, home arrest, when he was free, and constantly watched. One thing when I done my own research about the Imam alayhi salam is his tolerance.
Yes.
There's a number of stories, and I'm sure you can elaborate a lot more than I can, my limited knowledge saying, but there's stories of him actually converting guards to Islam. Could you elaborate a bit more about that?
Definitely. It's amazing how the Imams, again, this is a lesson for every one of us, and especially the youth, because they have, sometimes I get, even from my own children and my own brothers and sisters and nephews and nieces, sometimes I hear things that, like, wow, I didn't know that can happen, or I didn't know you can do this in this manner.
Yes.
So as parents, as the older generation, we look and sometimes we find out, strangely, things that if I had this opportunity, I would have done wow by now.
Yes, yes.
You know,
Could you
that kind of
imagine?
thing. Exactly.
The access,
so you,
the things
yes.
that, yes.
So you guys, you should be making full use of this, making full use of every moment. Exactly like you mentioned, the Imam, in his time, his direct access was who? Well, the guards, the people who were supposed to be doing the toughest time on the Imam, giving the hardest time, the most difficult kind of days and nights for the Imam, by talking to them, by reading Quran for them, by praying for them, by just them looking at the Imam and seeing the Imam hours and hours and hours, he's prostrating.
Yes, and
Getting to a point where they look and they almost challenge one another. Is that a piece of cloth there, or is it a human being? Because he hasn't moved for the past few hours or
just a
overnight.
sujood, yeah.
It's just there during sujood. Not a single movement.
subhanallah.
So they get into that challenge between themselves, and this is narrated by those guards themselves. They look and every time we look at him, he's in sujood, not even moving not a single movement at all.
Yeah.
And how is that possible? And that already automatically drags your attention.
Yeah.
You think twice, what is this man doing? So every opportunity just by showing our behavior, just by the way we stand, just by the way we carry ourselves, just by the way we talk to people in our current society, is exactly what Imam alayhi salam was doing at his time. But he was what? He was in prison.
Yeah.
They would send, even at the time of Imam, the seventh Imam, Imam Musa Ja'far alayhi salam, Musa bin Ja'far alayhi salam, is he would be sent, for example, women to distract him.
Okay.
Because he was praying so much. And those women, obviously, their speciality was to dance and to make all sorts of,
yes,
you know, interesting, as if in their own thoughts, moves so that they could distract the person in front of them. And after a few hours or half a day, that woman would come out praying, totally changed, moved from a person of a, you know, a street girl
simple life
to somebody who was religious and totally changed. The same was with the Imam.
Wow.
They affect every single person around them. And this is, now that you mentioned, subhanAllah, I did not have this planned, and right now it just came to my mind. This is where it's painful when you see the khulafa of the time. How much that khalifa or how much that person was covered by shaitan's effect, that he would not be feeling, he would not feel the change, he would not change the same way that his soldiers or his army was affected by the Imam. How much this person, how bad this person would be.
It's the hard heart, right?
It is.
You know, you get that, you know, one-way vision, and
Yes,
you're not going to see anything.
Because just like you mentioned, like I said, this was not, definitely was not as part of my talk, but just now, like every single one of those soldiers, every single one of those guards, every single, even the worst of people come and get affected by the Imam. Salamullah alayhi. And this man, nothing, absolutely nothing, and he even goes through kind of that, he has that audacity to actually even kill the Imam. That's how far you go. And it's just, it shows the big difference between right and wrong. It shows the big difference between somebody who has a heart and somebody who doesn't. Because once you have a heart, you will be able to accept that message, see that love. I mean, what did the Imam do? He wasn't fighting anybody.
Nope.
He wasn't inviting loudly anybody to Islam and to being religious. He was just using his attitude, his humbleness, his respect, his akhlaq, his adab, his religion, his prayer, his purity, doing everything for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what he was doing. So our lesson is, yes, we should be doing this in our current society. The youth should be making use of every single gathering, every single settings, every single group that they make, every meeting that they sit and they spend hours and hours talking and, you know, maybe even coffee and tea and food and shisha and you name it. You have all this time. Make use of every single
Utilize
move
it properly,
to do the job right.
Subhanallah. When you look at that, I mean, it's a beautiful reflection in terms of how compassionate he was to the people around him and showed his akhlaq, literally rubbed off on the people around him. But the leaders, as you said, very hard-hearted, very, you know, strong-willed on the other side. But again, it reflects on today's world. You know, you see people there fighting for their lives, but still on the haqq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, having that purity and showing that compassion towards one another, even their, you know, their enemies, but yet what happens to them? You know, so it's very relatable in terms of what's going on today. But time is of an essence in terms of what we need to be doing with our own time and utilizing it properly.
Definitely.
Many lessons from the Imam's life.
Definitely.
Subhanallah. Sorry to give you that curveball.
No,
It made you go off track.
It was for a moment. I was like, just he was just there.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're coming up towards the end of the show, and it's just been, again, it's always goes so quickly with you because the conversations are absolutely incredible. I want to kind of end the show now talking about the birth of the 12th Imam, alayhi salam, but also, what was the environment around that? How did all that happen? Because I know it was done in private. Not many people had access to Imam Mahdi Ajalullah for Sharif. How did the Imam, conjure all of this?
He was, interesting enough, the Khulafa of the time, those Khulafa, at the same time that they were so arrogant, at the same time, they had received so much information about the Imams and especially the birth of the 12th Imam, Ajalla Ta'ala Farajah Sharif. And they knew that with the birth of the 12th Imam, something major will happen.
Yes.
The news was, this is the one who will restore the religion. Now, obviously, they didn't know when, but they knew this is the man who will restore religion.
Yes.
And according to all the... And this proves, by the way, this is one of the best methods to prove to people, to the general public and to the ones who deny this, that there is a reason why the Imam had to be born in hiding. Because of the Khulafa of the time, they knew exactly what the Imam's mission is. And where did they know that from? Obviously from the Prophet ﷺ and all the narrations that were passed over. So whatever they had done, the mess that they had received, basically, and done, the damage that they had done over the years with the previous Imams, they still knew that this man will come and he will destroy that darkness and bring light. He will restore everything as it was at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So naturally, he was being kind of put under big monitoring groups. Everybody is checking. Nobody got away with giving birth. No woman got away with giving birth unless that child was either killed or segregated, separated from the mother. The same, similar that they did with the time of the Pharaoh and Musa alayhi salam. Because he had received as well similar message from his people, from his tellers, fortune tellers at the time, Pharaoh. So that had to go into a very big hiding state, and that's why the mother of the 12th Imam, Ajalullah Ta'ala Farajah Sharif, she had no signs of birth whatsoever.
Subhanallah.
And Imam Hassan Askari, obviously, he had told his sister when to be looking forward to the birth of the 12th Imam, Ajalullah Ta'ala Farajah Sharif, the one and only son of the Imam Hassan Askari. And she attended that night. He told her when to attend, and she attended, that she was there.
Wow.
And that's why she is buried in Samara, Sayyida, the aunt of the Imam Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the Hakima. She's buried in the same area, in the same area.
Same tomb, right? Isn't it?
Same tomb there as well. And that happened, again, without anybody noticing.
Wow. And
obviously you wouldn't get a big hoo-ha out of it, because it's all
kept hush-hush.
Very, very, very much so. And the Imam, naturally, being who he is to restore, he has that bigger kind of flag, the biggest flag with him from day one. He had carried that. And from day one, he was constantly, again, comforting his respected mother, Sayyidah Narjis Khatun, because he could not be alongside his father.
No.
And his aunt constantly mentions in various narrations how the Imam was talking and comforting his mother
Wow.
at the time. And it was, again, so much burden for a wife to be going through that, to carry that
Under those circumstances.
messenger of the future.
Subhanallah.
It's just amazing.
Can you imagine that weight on the shoulders?
She is an amazing woman.
Subhanallah.
She is just, and she is from Rome.
Yes.
She is from a Christian background, but they were all obviously muwahhideen. So it again adds to that unity
It does,
that you
doesn't
just
it?
mentioned.
Yes.
That the mother of the Imam had to come from a Christian background, but a
Subhanallah.
specific lineage that is
Subhanallah.
directly connected to, again, the teachings of the Prophet Isa alayhi salam and the prophets before him. So there is a lot, and there is so much to talk about in that, but I think inshallah we should leave that to maybe to the birth of the Imam sallallahu wa sallam.
Inshallah.
But I don't know how much time we have.
I'm sure we've got maybe 5 minutes or so, inshallah.
I just wanted to mention this part, that maybe it becomes helpful for us.
Please.
That I actually kept this for the kind of as a conclusion as well. I knew you would be at some point asking me to say something.
Exactly. That was going to be my next point. So you predicted me. We're doing too many shows together. You can read me like a book, subhanAllah.
Jazakallah khair. I wanted to mention the part that the Imam constantly, Imam Hassan Askari alayhi salam, constantly reminded the people around him and wanted to make sure that they understand. And by the way, sorry, between brackets, two of the people, as far as I understood, two of the people who were, as part of these 93, they themselves became the people who connected the 12 Imam Ajallah Ta'ala Fardur Sharif. They became one of those 4 that the Imam had appointed. 2 of them were one of those part of the 93 who had been meeting the 8th Imam and the 9th and then 10th and 11th. So they stayed and they became as well the carriers of the message, and they were the intermediary between the 12 Imam and Ajallah Ta'ala Fardur, and so they were the wakils, the special wakils as well. What a blessing!
What a blessing. Such an honor, isn't it? You know, to even think that.
Definitely, you know, they knew exactly what it is all about. But the Imam talks at some point about the issue of asceticism, zuhd, and people at the time, they were getting into various issues, various parts of this. Some were, you leave all worldly issues, just pray and just do your religious stuff and keep away from everybody else. Yep. And there are others who are totally convinced about their belongings and what they wanted in life, and they wanted to gather fortunes and money and future. But the Imam wanted people to understand what it is all about. So when he talks about this subject, which in Arabic they say zuhd, he explains it in such an amazing way. He says, it's not about what you own. You could be owning so much.
Yes.
It's about who owns you. Oof. So you could be the poorest or you could be the richest. But who owns you?
SubhanAllah.
Is it your ego?
Yeah.
Is it your habits?
Yeah.
Is it your money? Is it your wife and children? Or is it Allah that owns you?
SubhanAllah.
Because if you are owned by your food, then
it's going to get consumed and go bad anyway.
Yes. If you're owned by addictions or whatever, you're addicted to this and that, money can disappear. If you're the slave, so-called, of this life in any styles. So he was explaining this, saying, it's not about oh, I will leave everything, I won't have money, I won't work, so I don't need this, I don't need that. No, you need to do everything. But do not be the slave of that thing. Do not be the slave of wealth. Do not be the slave of land. Do not be a slave of wife and children. Do not be a slave of, attached so much that they own you. No. Allah.
Yes.
So it's all about who owns you, and He is the Malik al-Mulk. And that's why in the Surah Al-Fatiha you read Malik Yawmiddin or Malik Yawmiddin in two different narrations. He is the one who owns us. So we do everything to please Him. And if you have Allah as your owner,
what else do you need?
what else? Inna Allah, alaysa Allah bikafin abda. Allah says in the Quran as well. Like, isn't Allah enough for you? What else do you need? He sends sustenance. He sustains every single one of us, even the non-believers. And then the Imam adds, says, the best way to show that zuhd, the best way to show that asceticism is to avoid the red lines that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put for you.
Wow. Halal and haram.
Halal and haram. Keep away from the haram, and that's the best way that you can say, I have zuhd, which means I have kept myself on the right path in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what you have from Allah,
that's it.
Nobody else can take away from you.
Sayyidina, Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much. It's been an amazing show. Amazing insights as always. I wish I could sit here for hours, and I'm sure our viewers have really appreciated and benefited from your wisdom and knowledge. Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much. Dear viewers, thank you so much for tuning in to another incredible episode. Enjoy your celebrations on this blessed occasion, alhamdulillah, as best as you can. Please do join us the same time next week, inshallah, for another interesting episode on Ahlulbayt Live. We will see you then. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.